Coffee craving. The engine finally shuddered to silence, its metal skin ticking as it cooled. Maya peeled off her helmet, the sweat plastering her dark hair to her forehead. Another night, another warehouse fire contained. Nothing glamorous, just the grind of hoses and smoke and the acrid smell that clung to everything. She stretched, feeling the satisfying pop of her spine, and glanced at the clock on the dash. 6:03 a.m. Freedom was so close she could almost taste it. "Rodriguez, you heading out?" Captain Davies' voice boomed from across the bay. "Roger that, Cap," Maya called back, already unzipping her bunker gear. "Gonna grab some coffee. Brain feels like it's full of cotton." Davies chuckled. "You and me both. Stay safe out there." Safe. Right. Like the world outside the firehouse was more dangerous than wading through burning debris. Still, she nodded, the word a silent promise. Stripped down to her t-shirt and jeans, she grabbed her battered leather jacket and headed for the door. The scent of diesel and burnt sugar hung heavy in the air, a familiar comfort that she was oddly reluctant to leave behind. All she wanted was a coffee. A large, black, preferably bitter coffee. And maybe, just maybe, 10 minutes of quiet. The kind of quiet she hadn't experienced since, well, she couldn't remember. The daily grind, a little cafe a few blocks from the station, was usually her sanctuary. The barista, a girl named Chloe with perpetually stained fingers and a kind smile, knew her order without asking. The worn armchairs were surprisingly comfortable, and the low hum of conversation was usually just enough to drown out the echoes of sirens in her head. She pictured it now, the warm mug in her hands, the steam curling upwards, the first bracing sip. She could almost feel the tension in her shoulders easing, the relentless vigilance of the past 12 hours finally beginning to dissipate. It was a ritual, a necessary decompression before she could even think about facing the rest of her day. The streets were still mostly deserted as she walked, the sky a pale gray promise of dawn. A lone jogger pounded the pavement, headphones blasting, oblivious to the city waking around him. A stray cat darted across the road, its eyes gleaming in the dim light. Maya quickened her pace, the anticipation building. The bell above the door of the daily grind jingled merrily as she pushed it open, the aroma of roasted beans hitting her like a warm hug. Chloe was behind the counter, humming along to the indie music playing softly through the speakers. A few early risers were scattered around the room, nursing their coffees and tapping away on laptops. Perfect. "Morning, Maya," Chloe greeted her, her smile genuine. "The usual?" "Please," Maya sighed, already feeling a sliver of peace settle over her. She reached into her pocket for her wallet, her fingers brushing against the worn leather. Almost there. Almost. Then it happened. A high-pitched wail pierced the air, shattering the quiet. A baby. And it was really crying. The daily grind. The bell above the door jingled a cheerful greeting, a stark contrast to the turmoil still churning in Maya's gut. The daily grind exuded warmth, a haven from the chill October air. The aroma of roasting coffee beans mingled with the sweet scent of cinnamon rolls, a familiar and comforting blend. Sunlight streamed through the large front window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and highlighting the mismatched, yet cozy, furniture. A couple occupied the corner booth, heads bent low in conversation, while a lone figure hunched over a laptop near the back, fingers flying across the keyboard. The rhythmic hiss of the espresso machine provided a soothing backdrop. George, the cafe owner, a man whose smile lines deepened with every genuine greeting, beamed at Maya from behind the counter. His apron, perpetually dusted with flour, somehow managed to look perpetually clean. "Maya. The usual?" he asked, already reaching for a mug. Maya managed a weak smile in return. "Please, George. And maybe an extra shot today." He raised an eyebrow, a silent question. Maya usually stuck to a simple, single-shot latte. "Rough morning?" "You could say that," she replied, pulling out her wallet. The memory of the woman's terror, the baby's piercing wail, and the way everyone had stared at her still stung. She paid, the clinking of coins a jarring sound in the otherwise peaceful atmosphere. George slid the steaming mug across the counter. On the house. You looked like you needed it. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Heard old Mrs. Henderson tripped on the sidewalk again. You didn't happen to be involved in another rescue, did you? Maya sighed. George knew her too well. Something like that. She took a tentative sip of the latte. The warmth spread through her, chasing away some of the lingering tension. You're a good person, Maya, George said, patting her hand. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She mumbled a thank you and retreated to her usual spot, a worn armchair tucked away in a quiet corner, far from the window and the judging eyes she imagined were everywhere. Settling in, she savored the first few sips of her coffee. The caffeine was a welcome jolt, but it didn't quite reach the knot of anxiety in her chest. Pulling her phone from her pocket, she hesitated. Should she call David? Explain. But what was there to explain? She'd reacted. It was what she did. She just wished she could do it without causing a scene. Or terrifying innocent bystanders. She opened her email instead, hoping for a distraction. Maybe a new client. Maybe something, anything, to take her mind off the baby. A cry in the cafe. The stroller wheels protested with a jolt against the cafe's threshold as Sarah muscled it inside. A lone drop of perspiration traced a path down her temple, a stark contrast to the morning's cool embrace. She offered a hurried apology to the barista, a young man sporting electric blue hair, who managed a tight-lipped smile in return. Inside, the mingling scents of freshly ground coffee and sugary confections offered a fleeting promise of solace to her ragged nerves. She steered toward a secluded table, carefully circumventing a woman absorbed in the pages of her book. Pardon me, Sarah murmured, met with a brief, disapproving flicker of eyes. Finally settled, she released 6-month-old Leo from his infant seat, his tiny brow already creased in a frown. He had been slumbering peacefully moments before. Hey, sleepyhead, she soothed, lifting him close. We're here. We actually made it. Leo, however, remained unconvinced. He writhed in her arms, his face flushing. Sarah gently bounced him, humming a wordless tune. She had envisioned this venture as a small triumph, a brief return to normalcy amidst the clatter of conversation and the gentle chiming of mugs. She craved a latte, perhaps even a blueberry muffin, a small reward for enduring yet another sleepless night. But the delicate hum of the cafe was about to shatter. A whimper escaped Leo, a low sound that rapidly morphed into a full-throated wail. His small frame arched in protest, his complexion deepening to a furious scarlet. Sarah's pulse quickened. She resorted to every trick she knew, rocking, hushing, proffering his pacifier. Nothing worked. Leo's cries intensified, a piercing sound that reverberated through the once peaceful establishment. Head swiveled. The bookish woman leveled a pointed glare. A businessman sighed with exaggerated exasperation. Even the barista's vibrant smile faltered, replaced by a mask of ill-concealed displeasure. A wave of heat surged through Sarah. She longed to vanish, to merge with the scuffed floorboards beneath her feet. This was her ultimate fear realized. The judgment, the unspoken censure, hung heavy in the air. Her hands trembling, she rummaged through the diaper bag for a teething ring. It's all right, sweetheart, it's all right, she whispered, her voice swallowed by Leo's escalating cries. The cafe's comforting atmosphere had completely dissipated, replaced by a palpable, stifling tension. Every person seemed to hold their breath, silently urging Leo to silence. But he persisted, a tiny, enraged sound that exposed Sarah's deepest worries and vulnerabilities. All she had wanted was a coffee, a small, simple pleasure. Now, her only desire was escape. Reflexes take over. The infant's cry, a shrill lament, clawed through the cafe's hum, seizing Maya's complete focus. A baby, bellowing with all the force his tiny lungs could muster. The raw urgency resonated deeply, silencing the peripheral world. Gone was the cafe's ambience. The rich scent of brewing coffee evaporated. Only that desperate sound remained. Across from her, Sarah Chen, with whom Maya had been attempting polite conversation, patted the child's back in short, frantic bursts. "Hush, Leo, hush now. Mommy's right here." Her voice strained, a tightrope walk between panic and utter weariness. Instinct, honed by years of emergency response, kicked in. Assess. Diagnose. Act. The ingrained protocol was as natural as breathing. Leo, crimson-faced and balled fists, was clearly in distress. Not choking, thankfully, airways clear. Maya's gaze darted across the cramped table. Lukewarm coffee in mismatched mugs, a teetering tower of wipes, a ravaged scone with a jammy wound. Potential dangers lurked. Scalding spills were a real threat. A sharp table corner. Could he be hungry? The question escaped before she could soften it, a tad too abrupt. Sarah recoiled, color flooding her cheeks. I just fed him," she faltered, her voice trembling slightly. "Perhaps a fresh nappy." "I'm at a loss. Nothing helps." A surge of protectiveness propelled Maya forward. She gently stilled Sarah's restless hands. "Steady now," she advised, her tone unconsciously echoing the calm authority she projected at accident scenes. Excessive movement can worsen the agitation. A quick survey of the nearby area revealed a balled-up napkin discarded on the floor. A possible hazard should tiny fingers grasp it. She scooped it up, her movements efficient and precise, and deposited it in the trash. Sarah gaped, her mouth slightly agape. Nearby conversations had ground to a halt as patrons watched Maya's intense activity with a mixture of curiosity and concern. A belated wave of self-consciousness washed over her. She was probably behaving like a complete oddball. Here she was, in a public coffeehouse, reacting to a wailing infant as if it were a full-blown catastrophe. "Sorry," she mumbled, straightening. "Just, force of habit." She attempted a disarming smile, adding a dash of self-effacing humor. "Firefighters, we have an insatiable urge to mend things." Leo's cries persisted, undiminished. If anything, they had climbed another notch. Maya inhaled deeply, searching for another path. Perhaps something to divert his attention. Or perhaps, just perhaps, Sarah needed a brief reprieve. "Here," Maya offered, extending her arms. "Let me give it a try for a moment." Sometimes a change of scenery works wonders. Misunderstood intentions. Leo's shriek pierced the air, an escalating siren. Sarah jostled him, her biceps burning. The promised caffeine boost hadn't materialized, instead, a throbbing ache blossomed behind her temples. She'd imagined this stolen coffee break as a tranquil oasis in the chaotic desert of new motherhood. It had become, instead, a brutal examination of her perceived inadequacies. A prickling sensation alerted her to Maya's unwavering gaze. Not a friendly glance, but an intense assessment that tightened Sarah's chest. The other woman's brow was a knotted question mark, her mouth a firm line of disapproval. Sarah could practically hear the silent critique, "Your hold is wrong. You're not soothing him effectively. Are you even fit to be a mother?" "He's overtired," Sarah snapped, the words edged with defensiveness. "He missed his morning sleep." Maya blinked, some of the sharpness fading from her expression. "Right. Tired." But Sarah remained unconvinced. She noticed Maya's eyes darting to the way she cradled her son, to the rhythm of her pats. Probably deemed her either too gentle or too forceful. Everyone was a critic these days. "He has his moments," Sarah continued, her voice gaining volume. "It's perfectly normal. Babies wail. There's no manual for this, you know." Maya's face tightened once more, a flicker of something inscrutable in her eyes. Was it sympathy? Contempt? The ambiguity only fueled Sarah's escalating anxiety. I didn't mean to suggest. Maya began, then trailed off, her focus drifting to the intricate pattern in her latte foam. Suggest what? Sarah challenged, her grip instinctively tightening on Leo. He emitted a small, distressed sound, mirroring her inner turmoil. That I'm botching this? Because that's certainly how it comes across. The cafe's ambient noise seemed to recede, leaving only the sound of Leo's rising crescendo and the oppressive silence hanging between them. Sarah felt a hot flush creep up her neck, a mixture of anger and humiliation. She loathed this. Hated feeling so exposed, so inadequate. Hated the pervasive sense of failing. Maya finally met her eyes, her expression a blank canvas. I was just remarking how cacophonous it is in here. It could be overwhelming for a little one. Sarah scoffed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. Oh, so now you're an expert on infant sensitivities? Maya offered no retort, her jaw muscles working silently. The silence stretched, taut and suffocating. Leo's cries amplified in the sudden quiet. Sarah knew she was being irrational, likely projecting her own insecurities onto Maya. But she felt powerless to stop the torrent of emotion. The accumulated weight of the recent months, the bone-deep exhaustion, the relentless self-doubt, all threatened to drown her in that moment. She adjusted Leo in her arms, angling away from Maya. Just drop it, all right? Overriding instinct. The tremor in Sarah Chen's chin was almost imperceptible, but Maya caught it. The young mother clutched Leo tighter, her knuckles white against his ridiculously fluffy dinosaur onesie. The air in the cafe, already thick with the cloying scent of caramel lattes and burnt sugar, felt heavier now, charged with an unspoken tension. Maya had seen that look before. It wasn't the glazed, panic-stricken stare of someone in immediate danger, but the defensive crouch of a cornered animal. Sarah's shoulders were hiked up to her ears, her gaze darting around the cafe like a trapped bird seeking an escape route. Damn. The situation assessment protocol had kicked in hard. Baby crying, frazzled mother, crowded space. Her brain had skipped right over innocent afternoon coffee gone awry and landed squarely on potential crisis requiring immediate intervention. Years of ingrained training, of responding to sirens and screams, had made it impossible to simply watch. She'd meant to help. To offer a calming presence, a hand. Instead, she'd probably just scared the poor woman half to death. The memory of her own mother, fiercely independent and easily embarrassed, flashed through Maya's mind. How would she have reacted to a stranger barging in with unsolicited advice, however well-intentioned? Not well. Definitely not well. Maya took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing her shoulders to relax. She needed to recalibrate. Forget the flashing lights and blaring alarms, forget the urgency. This wasn't a burning building. This was a tired mother trying to soothe her child in a noisy cafe. She mentally scrubbed her internal checklist, replacing the stark urgency of possess. Secure. Stabilize with something softer, gentler. Hey, she said, her voice deliberately low and even. She took a small step back, creating more space. I didn't mean to intrude. It's just, babies cry. I just thought maybe you needed a hand. She cringed inwardly at the clunkiness of the words. Social interactions outside of emergencies were clearly not her forte. Sarah's eyes flickered between Maya and the tabletop, lingering on a stray crumb of a blueberry muffin. He's just overstimulated, she mumbled, her voice tight. Too much noise. Maya nodded slowly. Yeah, I get that. Cafes can be a lot. She paused, searching for something, anything, to bridge the gap. That's a pretty awesome dinosaur suit he's got there. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile flickered across Sarah's face. It was enough. A gentle approach. The sound was like a tiny air raid siren, drilling directly into Maya's skull. A baby, tucked into a carrier on the table next to her, wailed with the ferocity of a cornered wildcat. The mother, a young woman with tired eyes and a messy bun, bounced the carrier with jerky, increasingly desperate movements. Maya, usually so good at staying calm under pressure, felt her internal alarms blare. Fires she could handle. Collapsed buildings. Bring them on. But the sound of a distressed infant short-circuited something in her. She wanted to fix it, to extinguish the noise like she would a rogue flame. Everything all right? Maya asked, her voice a little too loud, a little too official. The mother, Sarah, flinched. Fine, she snapped, her voice tight. He's just being a baby. She avoided eye contact, radiating a prickly defensiveness. Maya recognized the signs. She'd seen it countless times in the faces of people caught in disasters, the fear of judgment, the raw vulnerability. But this wasn't a burning building, it was a fussy infant. She needed a different approach. Instead of pulling rank, Maya shifted tactics. She leaned slightly closer to the carrier, softening her gaze. Hey there, little guy, she murmured, her voice dropping to a near whisper. What's all the fuss about? The baby, mid-wail, hiccuped. Encouraged, Maya pulled a clean, folded napkin from her bag. It was one of the thick, absorbent kind she always carried. You never knew when you'd need to mop up a spill, or, apparently, distract a crying infant. She held it up, letting it flutter slightly. Look at this, she cooed, her voice taking on a silly, sing-song tone. A magic napkin. It can do all sorts of amazing things. She then proceeded to make the magic napkin dance. She wiggled it, folded it into a clumsy swan, then scrunched it into a ball and made it disappear behind her back, only to dramatically reveal it again. She pulled her best goofy faces, puffing out her cheeks, widening her eyes, sticking out her tongue. She looked, she knew, utterly ridiculous. Sarah, who had been glaring a moment before, now watched with a flicker of amusement in her eyes. The baby, though still sniffling, was clearly captivated. His tiny fists unclenched, and his wails subsided into whimpers. He tracked the napkin with wide, curious eyes. Maya continued her impromptu performance, feeling a strange sense of accomplishment. It wasn't putting out a fire, but it was something. She managed a genuine, unforced smile. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to get the hang of this whole people thing. Relief and gratitude. The cafe air seemed to shimmer, the collective held breath finally exhaling. Sarah, her face still flushed, cradled the now sleeping baby closer. Liam's tiny hand, usually balled into a fist, was limp against her chest. He was just hungry, Sarah mumbled, avoiding Maya's gaze. I skipped breakfast. Rookie mistake. She fumbled in her diaper bag, pulling out a small, pre-filled bottle of formula. He's usually such a good baby. Doesn't cry like that. Not in public, anyway. Maya, still crouched slightly, slowly straightened. Her shoulders, which had been ramrod straight with adrenaline, relaxed. The metallic tang of fear, which had been so sharp in her mouth moments ago, began to dissipate. She suddenly felt acutely aware of the spilled coffee staining the floor near Sarah's feet. Babies cry, Maya said, stating the obvious. She scrubbed a hand through her short, dark hair, a nervous habit. Loud noises aren't good for them. Sarah finally looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but softer now. Thank you, she said, the words catching in her throat. Thank you so much. I didn't know what to do. He just wouldn't stop. She glanced down at Liam, her expression softening. He's my whole world. You're welcome, Maya replied, feeling a strange warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't the adrenaline rush she was used to, it was something quieter, something human. She resisted the urge to check for escape routes or potential hazards. The cafe was just a cafe again. Seriously, Sarah continued, her voice thick with emotion. I was so overwhelmed. I'm new to this. My husband's away on business, and I lost it. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't, she trailed off, shaking her head. The way you were so calm. Maya shifted uncomfortably. Calm wasn't exactly the word she'd use. Instinct, she said dismissively. I work with kids. A half-truth. She worked with people in crisis, and sometimes, those people were kids. She definitely wasn't going to launch into a description of the charred remains of a house fire. Sarah managed a watery smile. Well, whatever it was, it worked. I really appreciate it. I mean, really. She reached out and touched Maya's arm briefly, a gesture of genuine gratitude. The simple touch sent a jolt through Maya, a foreign sensation that felt both unnerving and pleasant. She wasn't used to physical contact outside of training exercises or, pulling someone from a burning building. Look, Sarah said, can I buy you another coffee? Or, lunch? Anything. Maya hesitated. She wasn't good at this sort of thing. Small talk, social niceties, those weren't exactly in her skill set. But looking at Sarah, at the genuine relief etched on her face, she couldn't bring herself to refuse. Coffee's good, Maya said, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Black. No sugar. A warm coffee and a funny story. The silence was a heavy blanket, torn only by Sarah's gasping breaths. Then, a lone hand broke the quiet with a clap, soon joined by another, and another, until a wave of applause surged through the cafe, catching Maya in its unexpected warmth. A blush bloomed on her cheeks. Such open appreciation felt foreign, especially for this. Applause usually accompanied a conquered inferno, not a deflected airborne infant seat. George hurried over, his face etched with both worry and delight. Sarah, are you all right? Can I get you anything? And you, miss, that was extraordinary. He fussed, his gaze darting between Maya and the visibly shaken mother. I'm all right, Sarah mumbled, avoiding eye contact. A little rattled, that's all. She soothed the baby in her arms, who, thankfully, remained blissfully unaware of his close call. A familiar awkwardness washed over Maya. Just instinct, she muttered, turning back to her cooling coffee. She curled her fingers around the ceramic mug, finding comfort in its heat. This time, she actually sampled the brew. The robust, earthy flavor slid down her throat, calming her still racing pulse. Delicious. George gave a small cough. Well, instinct or not, you averted a disaster. Coffee's on the house for both of you. He winked at Maya, then shifted his attention back to Sarah, offering her a complimentary pastry and a few comforting words. Gradually, the cafe's usual murmur returned. The couple nearby resumed their conversation in hushed tones, while the student reconnected with their laptop, headphones firmly in place. The crisis, as sudden as it was, receded into the background. Maya luxuriated in another sip. The knot of tension in her shoulders began to unravel. A small, involuntary smile played on her lips. She could picture the scene as she recounted it to the crew. So, there I was, just trying to enjoy a latte, and wham! Flying high chair. They'd roar with laughter, of course. Diaz would inevitably make a wisecrack about finding a less hazardous hobby. But they'd also understand the ingrained reflex, the automatic response to danger, the utter inability to stand idly by. Closing her eyes, she inhaled the fragrant steam rising from her cup. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt at ease. Even content. The relentless pressure of the outside world seemed to dissipate, leaving only her, the comforting warmth of the coffee, and the absurd image of her impromptu rescue. A soft chuckle escaped her lips. Yeah, they were going to love this one.